Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here in the sports entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada, on prconnectionsradio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. It has been a fantastic time to be a hockey fan and to be in the hockey world. You have Vegas Golden Knights having a successful start to 2022-2023 season, winning 8 out of 10 games, being first in Pacific Division, and having the best record in Western Conference so far. Henderson Silver Knights, unfortunately, their record doesn't look great, but some of the talent has been progressing a lot in Henderson. Matter of fact, we are going to be doing a report later on about the Henderson Silver Knights. We'll be doing a report about the past month with Henderson Silver Knights, so stay tuned for that here on Vegas Hockey Hub. And I want to give a quick shout out to UNLV Hockey. Went to one of their games recently, watched them beat a very competitive team out there in the West Coast. So UNLV Hockey went out to see them at City National Arena. And like we do towards the end of every show, we recommend watching and supporting junior hockey. So regardless if it's UNLV Hockey, Las Vegas Thunderbirds, or Henderson Silver Knights, go out and support junior hockey. Go support minor league hockey. It is definitely a great experience and very fun to watch and entertaining as well. But the main topic for tonight's show and the main concept for tonight's episode on Vegas Hockey Hub. So far, the Vancouver Canucks have been struggling as an NHL organization. They have lost, 7 of their last 10 games. Vancouver Canucks currently are tied with the San Jose Sharks for second to last in Pacific Division. And there's been pressure put on Vancouver. They have made 1 or 2 minor trades very recently. And Vancouver, there's even been discussion about Bruce Boudreau and if maybe Barbecue Bruce might be on his way out in Vancouver. But until then, there's a lot to look forward to in terms of NHL organizations seeing Vancouver and potentially dialing them in as a trade partner at the NHL trade deadline later in the season. Because yes, it is early on in the NHL season. It is early on for most people. They're not going to look at the NHL trade deadline right away. But here on Vegas Hockey Hub, we like to analyze and like to examine the NHL and see what's going to happen 4, 5, 6 months down the line. So with the NHL trade deadline being down the road, here on Vegas Hockey Hub, I will examine the Vancouver Canucks and talk about not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 potential trade partners that the Vegas Golden Knights could be looking at the trade deadline. The first trade partner is the concept for tonight's show, and that is Vancouver Canucks. And with Vancouver, they have 4 players who Vegas could go after. Now, I'm going to start from the highest in terms of the cap hit, in terms of total salary, the highest, the one they had to give up the most prospects and picks for, and then go down to a player that would be cheaper, but would actually be a bit interesting in terms of conversation with the Vegas Golden Knights. So I'm going to start from high to low with Vancouver. And the first one we're going to be going over is the captain of the Vancouver Canucks, and that is center Bo Horvat. Now, Bo Horvat was a top 10 pick by Vancouver 9 years ago, and he has played his entire career in Vancouver. He has played 9 full seasons in the NHL, played over 580 games in Vancouver, and has actually just got past 175 goals as a Vancouver Canuck in his career. So Bo Horvat has been a good player in Vancouver. He has become captain of the Vancouver Canucks because of his leadership quality and what he has done in Vancouver on the ice and off the ice out there in Vancouver, British Columbia. But let me ask this question. Why would the Vancouver Canucks trade Bo Horvat? And more importantly, why would the Vegas Golden Knights be interested in a guy like Bo Horvat? Well, really, to examine that, you have to examine his last 2 years in Vancouver and really analyze what value he would have with Vegas if Vegas Golden Knights went out and traded for Bo Horvat. As you can see on the screen right here, he had a 30-goal season in Vancouver the past season, put up over 50 points, and this was all in 70 games. He actually missed 12 games last year due to injuries. And so far in 2022, 2023, he has actually had 8 points in 9 games. So Bo Horvat is actually averaging less than a point per game in Vancouver so far. And last season, he averaged around 0.75. So essentially 2/3 every single time. Now, when it comes to Bo Horvat, not even examining his past 2 years, but what he has done since going to Vancouver. I mean, he had a 20-goal season in 2016. He had a 20-goal season in 2017, a 25-goal season in 2018, and then went a little bit down to a 20-goal season in 2019. But Bo Horvat, since 2016, has hit 20 goals or more 5 of the past 6 years. This is the same guy in Bo Horvat who has hit the 45-point mark in 5 of his 9 seasons in Vancouver. And if it hadn't been for a shortened 2020-2021 season, he would have actually gotten to 45 points because he had 39 points in 56 games in that shortened season. So Bo Horvat has talent. He has a level, and he has actually been somebody who's been consistently getting 20 to 25 goals every single season. Now, Bo Horvat, also the interesting part about him is you have to analyze and you really have to discuss with Bo Horvat, does Vegas need a Bo Horvat? Does Vegas really need someone like him in that organization? Because the center position has actually been one of the best in terms of depth for the Vegas Golden Knights. Not only is Chandler Stevenson a center at his natural position, but Jack Eichel, who's really become the face of the franchise, averaging a point per game in Vegas, he is your top center. William Karlsson's had a rebound year so far. He is your second-line center. Brett Howden and Nicholas Waugh, they have been able to share minutes as your third-line center in the NHL. And when it comes to the Henderson Silver Knights, they actually have some centers in the AHL that can be called up if have to, like Paul Conor, for example. So the Vegas Golden Knights actually don't need a guy like Bo Horvat in terms of depth because the Vegas Golden Knights have plenty of centers. But what Vegas could use Bo Horvat for is if you want to win a championship. If the Vegas Golden Knights want to win a Stanley Cup, bringing in a Bo Horvat, a guy who can score 20-plus goals a year, would be a good idea for a playoff run. Because Vegas has been, unfortunately, lacking in terms of offense the past few seasons in the Stanley Cup. When they went up against Montreal, when they went up against Dallas, when they went up against teams that were better offensively, they were not able to match the production in terms of scoring goals in the postseason in 19 and 20. And unfortunately, they missed the playoffs in the 2022 playoffs, so you really didn't get to see the offensive production there. So Vegas adding Bo Horvat is not about depth, but it's about goal scoring. Because Bo Horvat can score more goals than Nicholas Waugh can. He can score more goals than Brett Howden can. And recently, he's been able to score more goals than William Karlsson has been able to. So, Bo Horvat would be an upgrade to Vegas and would be a middle six center for Vegas when it comes to goal scoring and bringing someone in to be an elite goal scorer for Vegas. Now, what would you have to give up for Bo Horvat? Well, you have to examine his contract in order to understand what Vegas would have to give up. Bo Horvat has a $5.5 million cap hit, currently has a total salary of $4.45 million, but the one positive for Vegas and one positive Vegas could use is that he would be a free agent this upcoming offseason. If Vegas wanted a rental to go all in for the Stanley Cup, if Vegas wants to bring in someone that can help them win a Stanley Cup and then go earn some money someplace else, Bo Horvat would actually be a great guy to have. Because Bo Horvat, he would only have to have him for 20, 25 games in the regular season. And then if you make the Stanley Cup finals, you would have to play 30 games maximum, maybe 25 games minimum with Bo Horvat in the lineup if you are the Vegas Golden Knights. So, Vegas getting Bo Horvat, all it would do is that it would add an extra body on offense. It would add someone who could take some time and take some pressure off for Jack Eichel, could take some goal scoring off of the pressure on the top six. So when it comes to Bo Horvat, what you would have to give up for him would definitely have to be very expensive. It would not be just a small deal to get him. As a matter of fact, what you would need to give up for a Bo Horvat would be something like this trade. You would have to give up a player on the bottom six. You have to give up an NHL player in that deal in order for Vancouver to get something back. You would probably have to give up someone like a Brett Howden, someone like a William Carrier. You would have to give up someone like Keegan Kolazar, someone who is already on your roster, someone who has a cap hit, somebody who essentially you would be using as the money part of the deal to kind of level it out. You would have to give up your top prospect. That would be Brendan Brisson, and you probably would give up a second-round pick. So a trade offer for Bo Horvat up in Vancouver is that you would give up a player like Brett Howden, you would give up Brendan Brisson, and a second-round pick to acquire a guy like Bo Horvat for half a season so you can make a Stanley Cup final run. Now, if you are watching around the world, would you be willing to do that? If you are a Vegas Golden Knights fan, if you're a hockey fan who's watching this show on YouTube and all the other platforms we put this show on, if you're Vegas, would you be willing to give up Brett Howden, Brendan Brisson, and a second-round pick to get a guy like Bo Horvat, or would you pass and try to go for someone who wouldn't cost as much, but could bring some value to the middle six in Las Vegas? Because if it's not Bo Horvat, then you move on to the next guy in line, and that is Conor Garland, who is a right wing for the Vancouver Canucks. And not only is he a first-line winger out there in Vancouver, but he is someone who has been in the NHL for a good amount of years. Conor Garland, 26 years old, was a former fifth-round pick by Arizona back in 2015. And after spending a trio of years in Arizona, he signs a deal over to Vancouver. And Vancouver has actually been benefiting a lot from Conor Garland ever since he showed up in Vancouver. His stats brought to you on the screen right there. Conor Garland in 2021, 2022 had 19 goals, 33 assists for 52 points. Also, check out that plus-minus, by the way, a plus 18 in Vancouver. And he's able to drop the gloves. He has 36 penalty minutes in 77 games last season in Vancouver. Now, early on in 2022, 2023, he only has a trio of goals, 2 assists, 5 points, and he really hasn't done much on the defensive end. His plus-minus is exactly 0 in 8 games so far in Vancouver. Now, Conor Garland is an interesting case because what would Vegas want for Conor Garland? Why would Vegas need a Conor Garland in their organization? Chandler Stevenson, even though he's a natural center, can be bumped over to the wing. So would he replace Chandler Stevenson on the first line out there in Vegas? Probably not. Would he replace Mark Stone? Absolutely not. Mark Stone is going to be, unless injuries happen, Mark Stone's going to be your first line winger out there in Vegas. But what Conor Garland could do, however, is that he would be a guy that could take over in the middle six. Because the middle six, you have Phil Kessel, you have Michael Amadio, you have Brett Howden, for example. But I would say that Conor Garland would actually be somewhat of an upgrade if you put him in the middle six for Vegas instead of the top six. Because Vegas, in terms of the middle six, that is an opportunity to add someone to get an upgrade for Vegas in the middle six out there T-Mobile Arena. Because look, Brett Howden is a good player, but Brett Howden, to me, it really feels like Brett Howden, he's more of a traditional center. Brett Howden is more of a traditional bottom six center in the NHL, so it really feels like him being on the middle six at times, it doesn't feel right. Nicholas Waugh should be a top six forward, but right now he is being put on the bottom six, and you can kind of put him at the wing, but once again, he's a natural center. That is what his position normally is. So outside of Phil Kessel and William Carrier is normally on the bottom six, you really don't have much wiggle room on the middle six out there in Vegas. So I would recommend adding a guy like Conor Garland to the Vegas Golden Knights because of all the things that you could build in that organization. Now, what you would have to do to acquire a guy like Conor Garland, what assets Vegas would have to give up in a Conor Garland deal would be completely different than what Bo Horvat's deal would be. Whereas Bo Horvat is more of an established name as a guy who already is a 30-goal scorer and someone who can be a top six guy, because Conor Garland would probably be a middle six forward for Vegas. Not only would he not have to cost so much in terms of prospects and picks, but what he would have to give you is a big term cap hit. Because Conor Garland, it has a $4.9 million cap hit. He's going to be making $4 million in terms of total salary. But where Bo Horvat and Conor Garland differ, Bo Horvat will be a free agent next offseason. He will be a rental. He will be done. Whereas Conor Garland will have 3 years remaining after this deal. And because you're going to be having a deal and you're going to be having length on this contract, Conor Garland, you would actually have to give up multiple things in the deal just to get it done. So what I could see happen and what I possibly could see for the Vegas Golden Knights is that you would have to give up a prospect and you'd have to give up maybe a second and a third round pick for Conor Garland. You'd have to give up, multiple picks in order to take on the length of that contract. And when you really say that there could be a prospect that Vegas would have to give up in the deal, well, there's really only a few people I can say would be practical when it comes to a deal for a prospect out there. I would say maybe somebody like Zach Dean would be an idea. You could actually look at someone like, for example, Danny Chaka, Leighton Ayak. The Vegas Golden Knights have prospects down there in Henderson, and they would not be your top prospects. I did not mention any of the 4 top prospects that Vegas has currently in their system, but you would have to give up one of those prospects and then probably give up 2 higher value picks in order to get Conor Garland, because his length is the reason why you would have to do that. So we mentioned Bo Horvat. We mentioned Conor Garland. Now, Nils Hoglander is a former second-round pick for the Vancouver Canucks, and at only 21 years old, would provide insane value for the Vegas Golden Knights bottom six. Now, why would Nils Hoglander be given up in Vancouver? Why would they give up a guy that is only 21 years old, a former second-round pick in 2019? Why would Vancouver put him on the trade block? Well, it's actually very simple, because Vancouver cannot find a roster spot for Hoglander. Vancouver, over the past 3 seasons, have been trying desperately to put him on the bottom six. They've put him in the middle six at times, but Vancouver is struggling to put him consistently in the lineup in Vancouver. There's been times where he's been a healthy scratch. There's been times where he has been, floating in between the NHL and the taxi squad. There was times where Hoglander wasn't even in the lineup and he was just sitting for a while. So Hoglander, the reason why Vancouver could give him up is because they've been struggling to put him in the lineup consistently, and Vegas could take full advantage of it. Now, Hoglander's stats in Vancouver, he had 18 points last year, and he had only 60 games because, once again, being on the bottom six and being in and out of the lineup every single time, it doesn't really allow you to build momentum in the NHL. It really does not build any type of opportunity for Nils Hoglander to be a consistent force for the Vegas Golden Knights, to be a consistent presence in Vancouver, whereas Vegas could actually build his presence, could actually build momentum out there in Vegas. And also, anyone who watched his statistics heading in to the NHL, you will know that he has the talent in the NHL. This is a guy who played in the SHL. This is a guy who played in the World Juniors Championships for Sweden. So because he played for Team Sweden, because he's played in the SHL, he is someone who has been playing 3 years professional hockey at 21 years of age, and he just really needs a chance to have a everyday position in the NHL. So Vegas getting him actually wouldn't be as complicated as it should be. As a matter of fact, I would say that if Vegas gave up a 5th-round pick, if Vegas gave up a 6th-round pick, if Vegas called Vancouver right now and offered a draft pick for Nils Hoglander, I actually believe the job would be done. Because Vancouver, once again, is selling, and selling. And because Vancouver is selling right now, and Vancouver is trying as hard as they can to build up as much draft capital and build enough future assets as possible, I think having a 21-year-old in Nils Hoglander, who has been in and out of the lineup in Vancouver, you put him on the bottom six in Vegas, no doubt about it, Vegas would be a deadlier team, would be a stronger team as a result if Vegas was able to build around a guy like Nils Hoglander, because Nils Hoglander has talent and has potential in the NHL. It's just not being capitalized in Vegas. And I just believe that Vegas would be able to do it. Vancouver hasn't been able to, so Vegas should capitalize on it. Now, you see his contract for a rookie deal, $925,000 total salary would be a win for Vegas and actually would be a good friendly deal for Vegas long term. Not only is he a restricted free agent, but he would also get his rights retained by Vegas so they could actually sign him long term if they think that he could be a future asset in Vegas. So option one, as I'm going to go back to it real quick. So option one was Bo Horvat, the captain of the Vancouver Canucks, a guy you would have to give up. You'd have to give up a player, a prospect, and a 2nd-round pick for, and that would be center Bo Horvat, the captain of the Vancouver Canucks. You would have right wing Conor Garland, who you would have to give up less top prospects, but you would have to give up more picks in the deal to get Conor Garland over to Vegas. You have Nils Hoglander, who's a young 21-year-old who's in and out of the lineup in Vancouver, former 2nd-round pick in 2019, and you'd have to give up a 4th-round pick or a 5th-round pick in the deal. You wouldn't have to give up much to get him. And then lastly, Nils Åman is a similar story in Vancouver. Now, Nils Åman was a 6th-round pick by the Colorado Avalanche in 2020. He came over to Vancouver on an entry-level deal this offseason. In the 2022 NHL offseason, the Vancouver Canucks signed Nils Åman to a deal that actually would be very friendly for the Vegas Golden Knights. He signed a 2-year deal worth $1.85 million. that is a base salary of $750,000 for this season, and then bumps up to $800,000 for next season. So the Vegas Golden Knights would actually have a team-friendly deal here if they decided to go out and get Nils Oman from the Vancouver Canucks. And similar in this situation, you actually wouldn't have to give up much to get him in this deal. As a matter of fact, I actually say, why not trade Nils Hoglander and Nils Oman and flip them in a 2v2 deal with the Vegas Golden Knights? What if you took 2 assets from Vancouver, 2 assets from Vegas, and you flip them in a deal so that they can get 2 young guys up in Vegas and get 2 guys in Vancouver? You're essentially swapping 2 players for 2 players out there in Vegas and Vancouver. The 2 players that I would say would maybe be, I would say a guy like Paul Cotter, for example, because once again, he is 22 years old. He's not going to have that much of a cap hit. And more importantly, he would be somebody that you would have to give up in a deal, but you would be swapping out a young guy for younger talent as well. And I would actually say someone, for example, like Danny Myromanoff. So that's what I would do there. I would take Danny Myromanoff and Paul Cotter, send them to Vancouver, and you get Nils Hoglander and Nils Oman in the deal. And I think Vancouver, they would actually be building for the future with Cotter and with Myromanoff. And Vegas would be getting 2 forwards in the deal that would provide value to Vegas in Oman and in Hoglander. And both of these guys playing in the SHL, both of them playing for Team Sweden in the World Juniors. I say that Vegas would benefit a lot from this deal if they decided to go out and get some very good talent in the organization. So back to the original conversation at hand and back to what we were talking about as the show was starting. Vancouver selling off assets is not the problem. It's not. Teams sell off assets all the time. Vancouver selling off their captain and Bo Horvat, it's been done before. Captains get traded at the NHL trade deadline. It's happened before. It's going to happen again. It's going to keep on happening in hockey until the end of time. The issue is going to be is if Vancouver fires Bruce Boudreau and they bring in an assistant coach, they bring in an NHL coach from somebody else, would Vancouver change their philosophy then? Would Vancouver change their mindset if a new coach gets brought in? Let's say that the general manager for Vancouver gets fired as well, and they bring in a new general manager. Would they change their mindset at that point? Because it's no secret that when a coach gets fired, when a general manager gets fired, when a president of hockey operations gets fired, a lot changes in an organization. So as of right now, Vancouver is selling, and I believe Vegas should take advantage of it, but I'm going to leave it up to all of you. I'm going to leave it to everyone who's watching this show right here and right now. What do you think about Vegas potentially taking advantage of Vancouver selling and adding in a future asset that could help Vegas win a Stanley Cup? Could it be Bo Horvat? Could it be Conor Garland? Could it be Nils Hoglander? Or could it be Nils Oman? So until next time, this is Vegas Hockey Hub. I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. Follow me on social media at IanRickelli18 and follow the show at Vegas Hockey Hub. And you can go watch PRConnectionsRadio.com and go follow them at PR Connections Radio. And until next time, I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. Continue watching hockey. Go support junior hockey. Go Knights, go, and have a good one.